The universe is trying to tell you a secret. You know that heavy feeling when your alarm rings and your body refuses to move? That's not laziness. That's the same cosmic force that keeps planets spinning, stars burning, and your dreams trapped on repeat. I'm about to show you why Newton's first law controls your sleep and how NASA astronauts hack it to wake up instantly. But first, have you ever noticed? The moon never hits snooze your coffee, always spills at the worst moment. And your brain? It's hardwired to resist change, just like a black hole crushing light. This is the hidden force of inertia, and after today, you'll never see your bed, your dreams, or the night sky the same way again. Tonight, let's unravel how the universe cradles you to sleep, and why waking up feels like defying cosmic law. There exists a silent symphony in the cosmos, a rhythm older than time itself, one that cradles planets in their orbits, just as it holds you captive in your bedsheets each morning. This force doesn't discriminate between celestial bodies and drowsy humans. It governs the spin of galaxies and the weight of your eyelids at dawn. Newton called it inertia. You experience it as the impossible, soul-crushing resistance to waking up. When that alarm blares and you slam the snooze button for the third time, you are not weak. You are not undisciplined. You are, in that moment, locked in a battle against one of the fundamental forces of the universe. Consider the moon dutifully orbiting Earth for billions of years without faltering. Why doesn't it drift away? Why doesn't it crash into us? Because inertia, that quiet enforcer of motion and stillness, keeps it suspended in perfect equilibrium. Now think of your own body, warm and heavy beneath your blanket. That resistance to movement isn't laziness. It's physics. When NASA engineers calculate the thrust needed to push a rocket out of Earth's gravitational pull, they are solving the same equation your brain wrestles with every morning. Your bed is your launch pad, and your body, fueled by sleep hormones instead of rocket fuel, resists the transition from stillness to motion. Researchers call this sleep inertia, the disoriented, sluggish feeling you experience when jerked from deep sleep. Studies from Harvard's Division of Sleep Medicine reveal that your cognitive function in the first 15 minutes after waking can be as impaired as if you were legally intoxicated. That's right, the universe isn't just making waking up difficult, it's actively slowing your mind. Centuries before Newton penned his laws, ancient philosophers tried to explain why things move or don't. Aristotle believed rest was the natural state of all things, that objects wanted to stop moving. This sounds suspiciously like every person who has ever groaned, just 5 more minutes. But Galileo, rolling his balls down those famous inclined planes, proved something revolutionary. An object in motion tends to stay in motion, and an object at rest tends to stay at rest unless acted upon. Your morning struggle is Galileo's experiment, played out in real time. Your bed is the inclined plane. You are the ball. And your alarm clock, that's the unseen hand nudging you into motion. If inertia is the cosmic law, then melatonin is the gravitational pull of sleep. Secreted by your pineal gland as darkness falls, this hormone doesn't just make you sleepy, it anchors you to rest. Think of it as the moon's tidal pull on Earth's oceans, but instead of shifting water, it drags your consciousness into deeper, slower waves. Scientists at MIT have shown that artificially suppressing melatonin in test subjects leads to a 40% reduction in sleep inertia symptoms. Your body isn't betraying you. It's obeying biochemistry as immutable as planetary motion. Here's where it gets fascinating. Astronauts aboard the International Space Station experience a perpetual state of free fall, what we call zero gravity, but their struggle to sleep and wake up is eerily similar to ours. Without Earth's sunrise cues, their circadian rhythms drift. NASA's solution: brutally precise light therapy and scheduled exercise scientific net forces to overcome inertia. If astronauts must engineer their way out of sleep's pull, what hope do the rest of us have? Plenty, actually, because the same physics that binds you also offers escape routes. The battle between movement and stillness began long before the first human ever pressed snooze on an alarm clock. It started in the swirling particles of the early universe, when the fundamental forces of nature established the rules that would govern everything from spinning galaxies to sleeping minds. As dawn breaks in your bedroom, this cosmic conflict plays out in your very cells. With your consciousness caught in the middle dot, you awaken to your alarm in the dim morning light, body heavy as lead, eyelids glued shut by forces far more powerful than mere tiredness. This isn't ordinary fatigue. It's the weight of 13.8 billion years of cosmic history pushing down on you. When you struggle to swing your legs over the bed's edge, you're reenacting the universe's oldest drama, the fundamental tension between motion and rest that has shaped reality since the Big Bang. Neuroscientists have discovered startling parallels between cosmic phenomena and human sleep patterns. Just as galaxies rotate around invisible halos of dark matter, your sleep-wake cycles orbit an invisible biological truth. Your body doesn't just need sleep, it fundamentally resists change. Studies at Stanford's Sleep Research Center reveal the brain in sleep inertia shows electrical activity patterns remarkably similar to matter in a superfluid state, where particles move with near-zero friction. This explains why thoughts feel so viscous and slow. Upon waking, your synapses are literally resisting the transition between states. The secret actor in this drama is adenosine, a neurotransmitter that accumulates in your brain like cosmic dust settling between stars. Each hour you're awake deposits more of this sleep-promoting chemical between your neurons. When you finally sleep, cerebral spinal fluid floods through newly discovered brain channels, dubbed the glymphatic system, to wash away the adenosine buildup. This nightly cleansing is as essential to brain function as asteroid impacts were to forming Earth's oceans. But here's where biology conspires against you. Adenosine doesn't disappear instantly upon waking. Recent fMRI studies show it lingers like morning fog in valleys, particularly in your prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for decision-making and willpower. This explains why choosing to get out of bed feels impossible. Your judgment center is swimming in sleep chemicals while simultaneously being electrocuted awake by stress hormones. It's like trying to start a car with half an engine flooded and the other half overheating. Ancient civilizations intuitively understood this cosmic balance. The Egyptians depicted sleep god Hypnos as peacefully floating in space, cradled by the eternal void. Chinese medicine's concept of yin and yang perfectly mirrors the interplay between sleep and wakefulness. Even the Greek myth of Hypnos, sleep, and Thanatos, death, being twin brothers, reveals an early understanding that sleep represents a threshold state between existence and nothingness. Modern sleep science has confirmed these intuitions in startling ways. Advanced EEG monitoring reveals that during deep sleep, brain activity synchronizes in waves moving at just 0.5 to 4 Hz frequencies, remarkably close to Earth's own electromagnetic resonances, the Schumann frequencies. It's as if our brains tune into planetary rhythms while we sleep, then fight against this synchronization upon waking. Your morning battle takes place on multiple fronts simultaneously. Your muscles experience literal sleep paralysis, not dangerous, but evolutionary. Your ancestors developed this to prevent acting out dreams and falling from trees. Your core temperature, which drops during sleep, needs about an hour to rise to daytime levels. Even your blood pressure performs a slow crescendo from its nighttime lows. Every system in your body obeys its own transition timeline, creating a cacophony of biological resistance to morning. But there's hope encoded in this struggle. Understanding that morning, inertia is fundamental to nature itself, not personal weakness changes everything. Tomorrow, when your alarm sounds, instead of cursing your tiredness, recognize it, the echo of the Big Bang reverberating through your cells, the ancient dance of inertia and momentum that spins planets and stars. You're not just waking up, you're participating in the ongoing creation of the universe. The blinding white light of a spacecraft's alarm flashes as Commander Daniel Foster floats in his sleeping bag, tethered to the wall of the International Space Station. His eyes open to pitch black, not the soft darkness of a bedroom, but the absolute void of space pressing against the windows. This is the most disorienting wake-up call imaginable. No up or down, no sunrise, and worst of all, no gravity to signal to his body that it's morning. Back on Earth, you might assume astronauts, elite specimens of human willpower, spring awake with military discipline. The truth? They don't. ENASA has spent $100 million researching why spacefarers struggle with sleep even more than Earthlings do, uncovering insights that will revolutionize how you wake up. The crisis began in the 1980s, when Mission Control noticed astronauts making elementary mistakes in the crucial first hours after waking. They'd misread instruments, lose focus during experiments, and even forget basic procedures problems eerily similar to those caused by sleep deprivation. The culprit? Circular sleep inertia, a phenomenon where the body's natural wake-up signals get trapped in orbital free fall. On Earth, your inner ear's fluid detects gravity to anchor your sense of time and space. In orbit, this system fails catastrophically, and with it goes any chance of waking up refreshed. After 20 years of failed solutions, including terrifying experiments with stimulant cocktails, NASA neurologist Dr. Elizabeth Whitmore made a breakthrough discovery. The key isn't fighting inertia, it's riding it like a wave. Her team developed the 3-2-1 wake protocol, which doesn't just minimize sleep inertia, it transforms it into a superpower. When adapted for Earth's gravity, this system can help you achieve what sleep researchers call lucid wakefulness, that elusive state where your mind snaps to attention the moment your eyes open. The first secret lies in light sequencing. In space, astronauts use precisely timed LED arrays that simulate Earth's sunrise while still inside their sleep pods. But you can hack this at home with two $15 smart bulbs, one warm orange, one cool blue, programmed to transition over 30 minutes. The science behind this is profound. The orange wavelengths gently suppress melatonin, while blue light triggers cortisol production in a physiological cascade that NASA calls chemical daylight. Unlike jarring alarms, this mimics how our ancestors awoke to gradual dawn light by slowly lowering the drawbridge between sleep and consciousness. Next comes microgravity stretching techniques adapted from astronaut exercise physiology. Instead of bolting upright, which shocks your cardiovascular system, you'll perform 3 subtle moves while still lying down. First, pointing and flexing your feet 10 times to activate lower body circulation. Second, slowly rotating your wrists to stimulate brain-body connections. Third, performing eye push-ups, alternating focus between near and far objects to reboot visual processing. These aren't random. They're based on the exact sequence astronauts use to recalibrate their proprioception after floating in space. The final, most powerful element is gravity-assisted breathing. In orbit, astronauts struggle because exhaled carbon dioxide forms microbubbles around their heads. They can't escape. This actually worsens morning grogginess. But Earth's gravity gives you an advantage through what pulmonologists call drainage breathing. By lying on your right side and taking 4 slow, deep breaths with an extended exhale, you activate lymphatic drainage pathways that flush sleep chemicals from your brain up to 40% faster than normal waking. It's like giving your glymphatic system a gravity-powered turbo boost. When astronaut Christina Koch returned from her record 328 days in space, she revealed an astonishing truth. Learning to wake up right is harder than any spacewalk. The same cosmic forces that bend star systems cradle your sleep. They can either imprison you or propel you. Tomorrow morning, when your sequence lights begin their celestial dance, remember, you're not just waking up. You're conducting an orchestra of biological rhythms as old as the universe itself. Beneath 2,000 feet of glacial ice, where no sunrise has penetrated for millennia, life moves to a rhythm that defies all conventional biology. Transparent nematodes, no longer than an eyelash wriggle, through pitch-black subglacial rivers, in perfect synchrony, their translucent bodies contracting in waves that match the moon's invisible pull on Earth's crust. These Antarctic iceworms, unknown to science until 1998, have become unlikely teachers in humanity's quest to understand sleep. Their existence proves what chronobiologists now suspect: life didn't just evolve to tell time by light and darkness. Some organisms, perhaps all organisms once, kept time by listening to gravity itself. The discovery came when glaciologists noticed the worm's population mysteriously rising and falling through ice layers with precise 24.8-hour cycles, the exact length of a lunar day. At first, researchers assumed residual sunlight penetrating the ice guided them. Then they drilled observation tunnels and made an astonishing discovery. The worms weren't following any light pattern we could identify, recounts Dr. Alicia Fernandez of the McMurdo Research Station. But when we compared their movements to seismometer readings, every migration spike matched peaks in moon-induced terrestrial tides. The worms were responding to gravitational fluctuations of less than 0.1% of Earth's total gravity, equivalent to sensing a single grain of sand placed on your shoulder from across a football field. Your body remembers this forgotten language. Deep in the otolith organs of your inner ear, those tiny calcium carbonate crystals, responsible for balance, lie specialized proteins called piezoreceptors. For over a century, we thought their only function was maintaining equilibrium. Then in 2023, MIT's Gravitational Biology Lab made a breakthrough. When researchers exposed human piezoreceptors to precisely modulated gravitational waves mimicking lunar tides, the cells produced bursts of glutamate, a neurotransmitter critical for wakefulness. It's a vestigial system, explains lead researcher Dr. Eli Vasquez. We evolved to detect gravitational tides as a secondary timekeeping mechanism, a backup when light cues weren't available. This explains why astronauts suffer such profound sleep disruptions in microgravity, and why adding slight vibrations to space station sleeping pods improved ISS crews' wakefulness by 53%. It also suggests why you wake groggy modern life has placed a vibrational gag order on your biology. Between memory foam mattresses, carpeted floors, and elevated bedrooms, we've unintentionally soundproofed ourselves from Earth's natural rhythms. The iceworm's lesson becomes clear. Your body expects to feel planetary nudges during sleep transitions, and without them, the wake-up process stalls like a car engine flooded with gasoline. Ancient cultures seem to intuit this connection intuitively. Neolithic sleeping chambers built into bedrock, Japanese tradition of woven tatami floor sleeping, even Victorian brass bed frames, all share an unintended trait. They transmit subtle seismic vibrations better than modern bedding. When anthropologists analyzed 122 traditional sleep practices, they found 83% involved direct ground contact or vibration-conductive materials. The most telling clue came from the Q-Iro people of the Andes, who still practice earth listening by sleeping with one ear pressed to stone. Their language even has a word tikari meaning to wake by the mountain's breath. Modern science is now catching up with this ancestral wisdom. Japanese researchers developed a gravity blanket woven with piezoelectric fibers that convert body movement into micro-vibrations, matching terrestrial tides. Test subjects using it showed 47% faster sleep inertia recovery compared to controls. The implications are staggering. Your morning grogginess may not be personal failing, but the physiological toll of living in what gravitational biologists now call the silent world, where we've muted Earth's natural wake-up calls. Reconnecting requires no special technology. Studies show simple practices reactivate your latent gravity sense, walking barefoot on natural surfaces for at least 90 seconds upon waking, transmits vibrations through the soles, sleeping with windows slightly open, allows infrasound waves to penetrate, and even placing houseplants near your bed. Their subtle nighttime movements generate beneficial micro-vibrations. Participants in a University of Reykjavik trial combining these methods reduced morning sleep inertia symptoms by 68% in just 3 weeks. The most poetic finding came from Antarctica, where researchers placed seismometers inches from iceworm colonies. The devices detected something extraordinary below human hearing range. The worms generated soft clicking sounds as they moved, collectively emitting a frequency of 7.83 Hz, identical to Earth's natural electromagnetic resonance, a pulse long considered the planet's heartbeat. Your cells recognize this frequency even now. EEG studies show the human brain produces identical waves during that fleeting moment when sleep releases its grip and wakefulness takes hold. Some biologists suggest this isn't coincidence, but memory and ancient dialogue between life and planet, encoded in our very DNA. Tomorrow morning, when you press bare feet to cool floor or soil, know this: you're not just standing up. You're rejoining a conversation that began when the first microbes swayed with oceanic tides. The iceworms still sing in their frozen choir. The planets continue their unending dance. And beneath the noisy distractions of modern life, Earth still whispers when it's time to wake. All we must do is remember how to listen. The monastery walls hummed as Rinpoche struck the bronze bowl a third time, the sound lingering in the frozen air like ripples across a still pond. Young Tenzin shivered as he knelt on the icy stone floor of the Chamber of Echoes, his bare toes curling against the ancient rock. The vibration traveled up his legs, through his spine, settling somewhere behind his eyes, where sleep clung like cobwebs. Around him, dozens of crimson-robed monks chanted in low tones, their voices blending with the bowl's resonance until the very stones seemed to sing. Tenzin had participated in this ritual for 3 years, ever since being sent to Tashiding Monastery at 14. 3 years of groggy 4:30 a.m. awakenings, of stumbling across frost-slick flagstones, with his breath-forming clouds in the Himalayan air. The other novices claimed their morning grogginess had faded after a few months, but for Tenzin, each dawn still felt like being dragged from warm waters into icy wind. Until this morning, his 17th birthday, when something in the chamber's song shifted. As the monk's chorus rose in pitch, Tenzin felt rather than heard the change. A subtle vibration beneath his knees intensified, traveling up through his body in gentle waves. His eyelids fluttered as clarity washed over him, not the jolting awareness of a splash of cold water, but something smoother, like surfacing from sleep's depths without breaking its surface tension. For the first time, he understood why the head monk never used an alarm clock. Across the chamber, Rinpoche's sharp eyes caught the dawning realization on Tenzin's face. The old master hid a smile beneath his whiskers. He remembered his own moment of understanding 60 years prior, when he'd first perceived the chamber's hidden design. The ancient builders hadn't merely constructed walls, they'd woven secrets into the stone angles, creating a resonance chamber that amplified certain frequencies. The monks who built Tashiding may not have known the scientific term 7.83 Hz, but they had mastered its effects through centuries of observation. After the chanting concluded, Rinpoche motioned for Tenzin to remain as the others filed out into the crisp morning. "You felt it today," he stated, rather than asked, knobby fingers stroking his favorite bronze bowl. "Rinpoche, it was like..." Tenzin struggled for words, his hands fluttering like startled birds. "Like being a fish carried by a current, instead of fighting upstream?" the old monk offered. He tapped the bowl, producing a clear tone that seemed to hang suspended between them. "This chamber sings in harmony with the earth itself. Your ancestors knew what modern science is only now remembering, that our bones remember vibrations our conscious minds have forgotten." Below them in the valley, the first lights blinked on in guest houses as tourists stirred to mechanical alarms. Somewhere a car engine coughed to life. Rinpoche sighed, the sound almost lost beneath the whispering wind that danced around the monastery's eaves. Before cities drowned the world in noise, humans woke to subtler clocks. He murmured, the creak of trees bending in dawn winds, the distant rumble of waterfalls changing tone as morning warmed the air, even the way certain rocks hum when struck by first light. He pressed the warm bronze into Tenzin's hands. "This is your birthright too, not just as a monk, but as a living creature on this earth." Tenzin turned the bowl in his hands, noticing for the first time the intricate patterns etched into its surface, not just decorative swirls, but precise mathematical ratios. As his thumb traced a particular spiral, the metal gave off an almost imperceptible hum. "Our bodies aren't meant to jerk awake as if attacked," Rinpoche continued, watching the dawn paint gold patterns across the stone floor. "We're meant to rise, like the sun itself gradually, inevitably carried by forces greater than ourselves." In the valley below, a backpacker groaned and slammed her hand on a shrieking smartphone. Above her, hidden in mountain mists, Tenzin sat motionless as the chamber's dying vibrations resonated through his bones. The line between ancient wisdom and modern science blurred in that moment, both paths leading to the same truth. Waking could be a battle fought with caffeine and willpower, or it could be this: a slow unfurling, a harmony between body and earth, a remembering of rhythms encoded deep in human cells. The old monk chuckled at Tenzin's expression. "Go," he said gently. "The goats won't milk themselves. But tonight when you sleep, leave one ear uncovered. Even city dwellers can wake to whispers if they remember how to listen." As Tenzin descended the stone steps toward his chores, he glanced back at the chamber of echoes one last time. Science might call it resonant frequency or Pierce electric effect. Rinpoche called it the Earth's Song. Tenzin, still carrying that strange morning clarity, thought perhaps both were true, that physics and poetry often described the same magic from different directions. The bowl felt warm in his hands despite the morning chill, as if holding captured sunlight. Somewhere between the monastery and the modern world below, between ancient wisdom and contemporary understanding, lay a secret about effortless waking. And perhaps he thought as he stepped into the golden dawn, the secret wasn't in fighting morning inertia, but in learning to dance with it. Tenzin's fingers trembled as he milked Dorje the goat, his mind still ringing with the chamber's resonance. The rhythmic ping of milk hitting tin seemed impossibly loud, each droplet carrying its own tiny vibration that echoed through his bones. He kept flexing his bare toes against the frozen ground, chasing the ghost of that morning's clarity. Across the courtyard, old Lamo, the cook, watched him with knowing eyes as she pounded barley for sampa, her wooden mallet striking the mortar in perfect 7.83 ages intervals, though neither she nor Tenzin knew the scientific significance of that number. "You've finally heard it," she said without preamble, pausing mid-strike. Her breath formed clouds in the crisp Himalayan air. "Don't look so surprised. Every monk gets that dazed look after his first real awakening." She resumed pounding, the heavy thuds vibrating through the stone courtyard. When I was a girl, before the Chinese came, our village woke to the valley's song. The first light would hit Jaegong Peak just so, and all the slate roofs in town would crack pop. Pop, pop, like firecrackers. Best alarm clock our people ever had. Tenzin's milk pail nearly slipped from his hands. You mean, this isn't just a monastery secret? Lamo cackled, revealing 3 gold-capped teeth. Child, the whole earth sings if you know how to listen. My grandmother used to say the best place to nap was against the prayer wheel wall, not because it was warm, but because the turning wheels made the stones hum like beehives. Put your ear to that boulder by the gate sometime. She pointed with her mallet toward a weathered megalith half buried in the soil. That one's been singing since before Buddha walked the earth. That night, Tenzin lay awake, long after the others' breathing had deepened into sleep. Moonlight streamed through the narrow window of the novice's dormitory, painting silver stripes across his blanket. Remembering Rinpoche's instruction, he carefully uncovered his right ear and pressed the left side of his head to the stone wall. At first, there was only silence. Then, as the monastery settled into its nocturnal rhythms, he detected it, a faint, rhythmic throbbing in the stone, like a slow heartbeat. His dreams that night were unlike any he'd experienced before. He floated through landscapes of vibrating crystal, where mountains pulsed like living things and trees swayed to silent frequencies. In one particularly vivid moment, he saw his own skeleton glowing blue, the bones humming at the same pitch as the chamber of echoes. When he woke just before dawn, it wasn't to the monastery bell or a senior monk's prodding stick, but to a gentle increase in that subterranean throbbing, as if the mountain itself were breathing faster in anticipation of sunrise. Down in the valley, hotel guests groaned as their smartphones erupted in digitized rooster crows. A German backpacker named Klaus fumbled for his earplugs. A Japanese couple tapped snooze on their travel alarm. None noticed how the old stone guest house trembled ever so slightly when the first sunlight hit its eastern wall. High above them, Tenzin stood at his window, watching the stars fade, his body thrumming with quiet energy. As the sun crested the eastern peaks, something extraordinary happened. The morning light struck a particular mica deposit on the cliffs opposite the monastery, making the crystalline sheets vibrate like guitar strings. A deep harmonic tone resonated through the rocks, so low it was more vibration than sound, yet Tenzin felt it in his molars. He arrived in the chamber of echoes before Rinpoche, drawn to the exact center point where yesterday's awakening had occurred. The old master paused in the doorway, his wrinkled face breaking into a smile that rearranged decades of creases. Without a word, he struck the bronze bowl just once, a pure tone that seemed to hang suspended in the air. As the monks began their chant, Tenzin noticed something miraculous. The vibrations weren't just entering through his feet anymore. They came through his uncovered ear, through his palms resting on his knees, even through the air filling his lungs. Rinpoche watched his young student with satisfaction. He remembered his own mentor's words from 70 years past. The difference between ordinary waking and true awakening is the difference between being dragged from a warm bed and floating to the surface on your own breath. After the chanting concluded, Rinpoche led Tenzin to the monastery's oldest section, a crumbling wing built into the living rock. Here, the walls bore strange carvings, spirals that matched the cochlea of the inner ear, stone channels that amplified specific frequencies, even what appeared to be ancient diagrams of the human vestibular system. Our ancestors mapped the body's relationship with the earth, Rinpoche explained, running his fingers over a particularly intricate carving. They knew what your scientists are now rediscovering, that every cell listens, even if the conscious mind has forgotten how to hear. As noon approached, Tenzin found himself at the megalith Lamo had pointed out. He pressed his ear to its weathered surface and immediately jerked back. The stone was singing, a clear, pure tone that vibrated through his skull. When he touched it with both hands, the vibration traveled up his arms and settled behind his sternum, where it seemed to resonate with his heartbeat. That evening, as Tenzin prepared for sleep, he noticed something remarkable. The dread he usually felt about the next morning's abrupt awakening was gone. In its place bloomed a quiet anticipation, not for the ritual itself, but for that magical moment of seamless transition when the mountain's song would lift him from sleep as gently as a rising tide lifts seaweed. Down in the valley, Klaus set 3 separate alarms on his phone. The Japanese couple debated taking sleeping pills to combat jet lag. None of them knew that just above their heads, hidden in the clouds, a young monk was learning the oldest alarm clock in human history, one that required no batteries, no electricity, just the willingness to listen to the Earth's eternal lullaby. Assess Tenzin drifted off. His last conscious thought was a realization: we've spent centuries trying to conquer sleep inertia with louder alarms, stronger coffee, harsher lights. But perhaps the solution was never about force. Perhaps true awakening came not through fighting nature's rhythms, but through remembering how to move with them like a leaf floating on a vibrating pond, rising effortlessly to meet the dawn. The 30th morning, after Tenzin's awakening, began differently. A landslide in the night had shifted the mountain's resonant frequencies. When dawn's first light touched Jiagong Peak, the chamber of echoes remained silent. No harmonic hum vibrated through the stone floor. Tenzin knelt barefoot in his usual spot, but today, the smooth rising clarity eluded him. Across the dim chamber, Rinpoche watched with knowing eyes as young monks exchanged nervous glances. The old master said nothing as their chanting dissolved into disharmony. He simply reached into his robes and withdrew a slender bone flute, yellowed with age, its surface etched with spirals, mirroring the inner ear's labyrinth. Without introduction, he played 3 notes that shouldn't have been possible on a single pipe: a low C, its perfect fifth, and shimmering harmonic above. Tenzin's breath caught. The tones weren't just heard, they moved through him like ripples in a pond, aligning something deep within his bones. Suddenly he understood. This wasn't merely an instrument, but a map of human resonance. Yangtze discovered this during the Great Earthquake of 1688, Rinpoche murmured, turning the flute in the dawn light. When external harmonies fail, he blew across the mouthpiece, producing a tone that made Tenzin's sternum vibrate. We must find the song within. As weeks passed, Tenzin learned the flute's secrets. Different overtones stimulated distinct systems: G-sharp for lymphatic drainage, E-flat for pineal activation. The most extraordinary discovery came when Rinpoche had him play, while standing knee-deep in the monastery's freezing stream. The flowing water carried the vibrations upward through his body, producing an awakening more vivid than any chamber experience. Down in the valley, tourists began noticing odd changes. Hotel plants flourished mysteriously near old stone walls. A jazz musician's chronic insomnia lifted after nights spent near the ancient guesthouse bedrock. Nobody connected these events to the faint flute melodies drifting down from the monastery each dawn. Then came Tenzin's greatest test. Sent to retrieve medicinal herbs from silent caves, where no vibrations carried, he woke freezing and groggy in total darkness. Remembering Rinpoche's teachings, he pressed his palms together before his lips and hummed first tentatively, then with growing confidence as his own skull became the resonance chamber. When he emerged hours later, dawn's light revealed Rinpoche waiting at the cave mouth. Without preamble, the old master extended the bone flute. "Now you're ready," he said simply. The unspoken truth shimmered between them. True awakening wasn't about perfect conditions, but remembering one's body was the first and final instrument. The morning air hung heavy with incense as Tenzin crossed the monastery's stone courtyard, the bone flute tucked securely in his sash. His bare feet had barely touched the frosted grass when Rinpoche appeared silently at his side, carrying a bundle wrapped in oiled leather. "You've mastered awakening in stillness," the old monk said, unfastening the bundle to reveal 7 small bronze bowls of varying sizes. "Now you must learn water's way." They walked in silence down the winding mountain path to where the Sangpo River roared through a narrow gorge. The August monsoons had swollen its waters to a thunderous torrent, sending spray high into the air. Tenzin shivered as cold droplets struck his face. Rinpoche knelt by the riverbank and arranged the bowls in a semicircle on a flat stone. "Play the morning melody," he instructed. "But this time, listen with your skin." As Tenzin brought the flute to his lips, the first notes were swallowed by the river's roar. He played louder, his brow furrowing with effort, until Rinpoche abruptly stilled his hand. "You fight the river as you once fought waking," the master chided. He dipped the largest bronze bowl into the churning water, letting the current fill it to the brim before lifting it free. The bowl vibrated in his hands, its rim trembling with the river's rhythm. True mastery lies in finding harmony between opposing forces. When Tenzin tried again, something shifted. As his breath moved through the flute, he attuned not to the sound, but to the way the river's vibration traveled up through the rock beneath him, through his knees, resonating with the air in his lungs. The flute's voice didn't compete with the water it danced with it, their frequencies intertwining like mist curling around stone. Days became weeks filled with watery lessons. Tenzin learned to play while standing waist-deep in ice-cold pools, feeling how water conducted vibrations directly into bone marrow. He discovered that certain rocks near waterfalls emitted perfect harmonic tones when struck with river-smooth stones. Most surprisingly, he noticed that fish would gather when he played specific low notes near the water's edge, their lateral lines apparently attuned to the same frequencies that aided human awakening. Back at the monastery, rumors spread about the singing monk. Visitors from nearby villages began appearing at dawn, lining the riverbank silently as Tenzin performed his morning practice. One such morning, a girl of perhaps 8 years, her legs withered by polio, dragged herself through the dirt to touch the hem of Tenzin's robe. Without thinking, he placed the flute against her spine and played a single sustained note. The child gasped as the vibration traveled through her body, tears springing to her eyes. For the first time in her young life, she stood unaided. That evening, Rinpoche found Tenzin staring at the flute in the lamplight, his face a mixture of awe and terror. This shouldn't be possible," the young monk whispered. The old master smiled as he lit another butter lamp. "You've merely discovered what physicians in Atlantis knew, that every illness is ultimately a disruption of the body's natural resonance." He placed a gnarled hand over Tenzin's heart. "Healing and waking, they're simply different verses of the same song." As autumn leaves began turning, Tenzin noticed subtle changes in himself. Where once he needed the flute to find his center, now simply standing near flowing water brought his cells into alignment. His sleep became fathomlessly deep, yet startlingly easy to leave, as though his body had become its own resonator, perpetually tuned to the earth's rhythms. The final test came on the first day of winter. Rinpoche led him before dawn to a frozen waterfall where massive icicles hung like crystal chandeliers. "Wake the river," he challenged. Tenzin hesitated only a moment before pressing his forehead against the ice and humming. Slowly, subtly, the glacier began to sing back, first a faint creaking, then a deep resonant tone as the icy structure vibrated. When the morning sun struck the falls, the entire face shimmered with sound, every droplet freezing and thawing in perfect harmonic rhythm. That afternoon, descending the mountain path, Tenzin noticed villagers had left offerings by the riverbank, not just for the monks now, but for the river itself. It struck him how little separated prayer from physics, devotion from vibration. Perhaps all sacred rituals were ultimately attempts to resonate with forces beyond ordinary perception. The first snowflakes spiraled down, Tenzin realized his education had come full circle. The Chamber of Echoes, the bone flute, the singing river, each had been a step toward recognizing that awakening wasn't something to be achieved, but remembered. The whole universe hummed with waking energy. One needed only to find where one's own vibration fit within the great singing web of existence. The deepest winter in living memory had stilled the monastery's echoes. Icicles thicker than Tenzin's arm hung like crystal teeth from the Chamber of Echoes' eaves, muffling the dawn chants under layers of frost. Where once the Sangpo River roared, now only wind-scoured silence stretched across the frozen gorge. Even Rinpoche's bone flute seemed muted its notes, absorbed by the woolen layers protecting numb fingers from the deadly cold. When the head monk summoned Tenzin to the forbidden northeast tower, on the year's longest night, the young monk had to dig through shoulder-high snowdrifts to reach its arched doorway. His breath came in ragged clouds as he paused before the iron-banded oak, upon which someone had long ago carved 7 spiraling grooves that mirrored the inner ear's labyrinth. "Enter slowly," came Rinpoche's voice from within. "Let the stillness enter you first." The tower's interior held warmth shocking after the killing cold outside. Not from any hearth, the circular space stood empty, save for a pedestal of black basalt at its center. Upon this dais rested an object that made Tenzin's pulse stutter. A perfect bell carved from what appeared to be obsidian, its surface liquid dark in the guttering light of Rinpoche's single butter lamp. Unlike other monastery bells, this one bore no clapper, no striker, no means of sounding it. When Tenzin reached a tentative hand toward its smooth flank, the old master caught his wrist with surprising strength. "The Moksha Ganta chooses when to sing," Rinpoche murmured. His breath didn't steam in the tower's peculiar warmth. 300 winters have passed since last it woke a sleeper. Tenzin withdrew his hand, but couldn't tear his gaze from the bell's hypnotic surface. A wrongness nagged at him, not about the artifact's supernatural aura, but something far more practical. "There's no resonance chamber," he realized aloud. "No stones to amplify its vibrations. How could anyone hear? You're thinking like a man who still believes hearing happens only here." Rinpoche tapped Tenzin's frozen red ear, then pressed that same finger to the young monk's sternum. "The final awakening bypasses the body's crude instruments. It speaks directly to the water in your cells." That night, wrapped in musty furs in the tower's unexpected warmth, Tenzin dreamed of standing in an endless subterranean cavern. Around him, stalactites vibrated at frequencies that made his bones hum. Their song traveled upward through the earth, not as sound, but as pulses of pressure, reaching sleeping villages where people turned restlessly, caught in dreams of distant music. Just as Tenzin reached to touch the largest formation, he woke with a gasp to find Rinpoche shaking him. "Now," the old monk whispered, "while night still holds the world." The obsidian bell glimmered in pre-dawn gloom. Its surface now sheened with condensation from the tower's mysterious warmth. Tenzin approached barefoot, despite the cold, his soles leaving damp prints on stone flags worn concave by centuries of midnight vigils. He hesitated only a moment before pressing both palms to the bell's dark surface. Absolute silence pressed against his eardrums. No pre-dawn chants filtered through thick walls. No river pulsed beneath layers of ice and stone. The deprivation felt physical, a pressure behind his eyes, in his jaw, along his neck. Then subtly, his discomfort shifted. The ache in his frozen toes receded first, replaced by a curious tingling that crept up through his arches. Similar sensations awakened along his palms where they touched the bell, spreading through wrists and forearms like slow-moving ink in water.b. While the time dawn's first feeble light pierced the high window, Tenzin's entire body hummed with silent vibration. His awareness expanded frighteningly. He felt each hair follicle rising on his arms, the rush of blood through capillaries in his cheeks, even the individual muscle fibers of his tongue resting against his teeth. The obsidian beneath his palms remained perfectly motionless, yet its resonance built inside him with mathematical precision, each harmonic overtune locking into place like tumblers in some celestial lock. When the perfect frequency, aligned precisely as sunlight, struck the bell's eastern flank, Tenzin's perspective inverted violently. The tower, Rinpoche, his own physical form, all seemed to recede, leaving only pure vibrating awareness. Some fundamental illusion fell away, the belief that he ended at his skin, that silence meant absence. He perceived now the eternal hum underlying reality, neutrons spinning in iron deposits beneath the mountain, air molecules vibrating between monastic buildings, even the whispered resonance of Rinpoche's aging bones, as they subtly echoed the Moksha Ganta's silent call. How long this state lasted, Tenzin could never later say. Eventually, awareness of his physical form returned, not with a jolt, but like a curtain being drawn back on a play, continuing uninterrupted. His hands still pressed against the obsidian. Rinpoche still stood watching with knowing eyes. The butter lamp still burned, though its wick showed no signs of having consumed more oil. Tenzin withdrew trembling hands. I didn't hear anything. Rinpoche smiled, and for the first time struck the bell with a small silver hammer. No audible tone resulted, yet Tenzin staggered as the vibration passed through him like lightning through water, raising every hair on his body. The final lesson, the old monk whispered. True awakening needs no external vibration. The body remembers its own perfect resonance. As they descended the tower steps, returning to a monastery just stirring from morning meditation, Tenzin realized something wondrous. His ordinary senses functioned as always, yet beneath their familiar input thrummed that new silent awareness. The bundled-up novices scrubbing frost from doorways no longer seemed separate from him, but extensions of his own vibrating existence. When he paused by the frozen prayer wheels, their unmoving surfaces seemed to pulse with latent potential, awaiting only spring's thaw to resume their eternal song. Villagers would later speak of that morning in hushed tones, how milk left outside had inexplicably warmed in its jars, how chronically ill elders awoke symptom-free, how every monastery bell had momentarily stilled at dawn despite no monk touching them. Klaus the backpacker abandoned his digital alarm clock that day, finding himself waking precisely at sunrise without explanation. And in the forbidden tower, the Moksha Ganta stood untouched once more, its obsidian surface swallowing the weak winter light, waiting not 300 more years, but simply until the next sleeper remembered how to wake without sound. Snow had buried the monastery beneath a thick white silence. Tenzin stood shivering in the pre-dawn courtyard, his bare feet numb against the frozen flagstones. For 77 mornings since the river froze, he had followed Rinpoche to the chamber where the black obsidian bell waited. The Moksha Ganta, said to hold the final secret of effortless awakening. Today, the old monk walked differently. His usual measured gait carried a new urgency as he led Tenzin past the sleeping quarters, past the meditation hall, to a narrow staircase carved into the mountain itself. Ice crystals glittered on the stone steps like submerged stars. The bell chooses when to wake sleepers, Rinpoche said, his breath swirling in the cold air. Inside the cave, warmth radiated from walls covered in ancient carving spirals that matched the cochlear structure, mathematical ratios marking harmonic intervals. At the chamber's heart stood the Moksha Ganta on a basalt pedestal, its glassy surface reflecting no light. Tenzin hesitated. Unlike the singing bowls in the monastery halls, this bore no striker or hammer marks. How does it know clapper? No mallet. Rinpoche smiled. The last monk who heard it ring died in the time of my teacher's teacher. That first morning, Tenzin pressed his palms to the bell's icy surface until his fingers burned with cold. Nothing happened. All week, dawn after dawn, He returned each session, stretching longer as he knelt before the silent artifact. By the new moon, he stayed in the cave overnight, ignoring protesting muscles and growling stomach. On the 13th day, exhaustion blurred reality. The cave's warmth became his own feverish heat. His breath sounded unnaturally loud, his heartbeat thunderous. When he placed shaking hands on the bell, something shifted not in the stone, but through it. A vibration traveled up his arms like liquid honey, slow and impossibly heavy. The darkness itself seemed to pulse. Tenzin realized with a start that he could feel, not hear, the mountain's resonance. Deep below, tectonic plates groaned against each other. Meltwater hissed through granite fissures. The bell wasn't silent at all. It amplified vibrations too low for human ears, thrumming against his palms at 0.1 Hz, the frequency of drifting continents. Rinpoche found him weeping, forehead pressed to the obsidian surface. "It's working," the old monk murmured. "You're learning to listen below sound." The true test came unexpectedly. One morning, a distant avalanche silenced even the mountain's subtle tremors. Tenzin sat clutching numb fingers, despairing, until he noticed something new. The vibration wasn't gone. It had moved inward. His own bloodstream pulsed with rhythmic certainty. His diaphragm rose and fell in perfect time with the missing resonance. He needed no external stimulus now. His body had become the tuning fork. When he emerged at dawn, villagers swore they'd seen fireflies dancing in the snow, though winter still gripped the valley. The German backpacker Klaus abruptly abandoned his alarm clock after dreaming of silent golden light. And deep in the mountain cave, the Moksha Ganta stood untouched, its black surface drinking the darkness, having finally delivered its secret about where true awakening begins. Tenzin stood atop Jaegong Peak as the eastern horizon bled from indigo to gold. Beneath his bare feet, the frozen granite trembled with the mountain's ancient pulse, a vibration he now felt as clearly as his own heartbeat. Winter's grip was breaking. Icicles wept diamonds onto the rocks below, where the first meltwater whispered of returning songs. Behind him, Rinpoche placed a gnarled hand on the obsidian bell one final time. No strike, no ritual hum, just quiet pressure. Yet Tenzin felt the resonance pass between them like a shared breath. The old monk's eyes sparkled with morning light. "You've become what the ancients called Svara Janani," he murmured. "A knower of rhythms." The revelation struck Tenzin then: why masters could wake without alarms, why yogis slept on stone slabs, why the monastery's bones hummed when the dawn light hit just right. True awakening wasn't something achieved, but remembered. The universe had been singing its lullaby since before time began. All we ever needed was to recognize we belonged to the chorus. Down in the valley, villagers emerged from homes rubbing their eyes, not from sleep, but from a strange and sudden clarity. The German backpacker Klaus stood barefoot in the guesthouse garden, staring at his discarded alarm clock with wonder. The river, still half frozen, began its slow hymn as meltwater found old pathways through the ice. When Tenzin closed his eyes, he saw galaxies spinning like prayer wheels, electrons dancing around atomic nuclei, all moving to the same rhythmic laws that govern monks and mountains. A smile touched his lips, not triumphant, but serene. For the first time in his 17 years, he understood morning didn't need to be conquered, only welcomed. And when he opened them again, the sun had risen not with a fanfare of light, but as naturally as a sleeper drawing breath, as inevitably as the tide answering the moon's silent call. The bell had rung at last,